Okay.
We are in the final days. I believe you're going to hear more talk about the great temple being built in Israel. Do you believe that at all? I didn't ask you ahead of time, so maybe.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly, and there's a push for that. And did you notice that one of the very first things when Trump was elected, the rabbis in Israel calling on him and Putin to use their international clout to do what? To rebuild the temple. Don't think this can't happen. I think impetus is on our side right now. I think we're moving towards a moment. And the rabbis over there, some of what the mystical rabbis are saying is very, very curious right now.
What can we find out right now?
Will we just go?
Yeah, I want to know. I know my audience.
So look, and there's so many of these articles. We've been running them at Skywatch TV almost every week right now. And so I only brought a couple of them with me. This one, Trump upset victory divinely sent to begin messianic process, say Israeli rabbis, right? And this one, ancient secret of Daniel's 70 weeks predicts end of days will come this year in 5777, which started in October last month in the Jewish calendar year and will be done by September of the coming year. So, and by the way, that was Rabbi Meir Horowitz 300 years ago, working on Daniel's time and half a time, and he set a date. He set a date 300 years ago. He said, this will all happen. The Messiah will arrive. The end times will begin in the Jewish calendar year 5777. The rabbis have held that dear to them since then. What is that? That's 2016 to 2017. Messiah will arrive. Now, they're looking at Donald Trump. One of the rabbis illustrated how his name in the gematria, the numerology of his name, actually means Messiah. Now, there's some weird stuff here that's going on. So think about this for a moment. In the Jewish Zohar, 700 years ago in medieval Aramaic, Orthodox Jews speculated about when will the Messiah be on the earth, right? And in the Vieira section of the Zohar, they said he will arrive on earth in the year 57, he will make himself known in the year 5773, which was 2012 to 2013. Oddly enough, Trump goes to Israel in 2012, decides not to run for U.S. president, meets with heads of states, comes out of that, you can watch the YouTube on television, and he starts talking to the Jewish people, telling them to vote for Benjamin Netanyahu and the Likud party, which they did, right? Wow. But what the Zohar said was, he will be identified. From that day and forward, there have been at least a dozen Jewish rabbis that have said, the Messiah is on earth now. He's been identified. He is soon going to make himself known. Well, some key things have to happen for the messianic figure in the Jewish mindset. For the Messiah to arrive, you can't think of him like we think of Messiah. We think of Messiah after the model of Jesus. He's the Son of God, divine birth, all of that. That's not the way the Jews look at the Messiah. They're looking for a king. They're looking for a political leader. As a matter of fact, Messiah to them means the anointed one, and it goes back to the ancient days when they would anoint a king and recognize him as this is the man that God sent. And what they're looking for is several things. First of all, they're looking for somebody in a political figure who can lead decisive battles in defense of Israel. This is why the only politician on the face of the earth that was standing up and saying, if I'm elected president, I'm going to be the biggest friend that Israel's ever had. We're going to undo the Iran deal, well, blah, 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 right? And being a friend of Benjamin Netanyahu. Secondly, they're looking for, when the Messiah comes, there will be an ingathering of Jews from around the world back into the Holy Land. That's why the rabbis, on the eve of his election, went on television and said, we need to call now Jews from around the world, come back to Jerusalem because the Messiah is here, right?
Yes.
There's another thing. Thirdly, they talk about when he arrives, he is going to reinstitute the temple service. So what was the second thing they did? They called on Trump and Putin to use their power to rebuild the temple and to reinstitute the temple service. I'm not saying that they think he is the Messiah. What I actually think is that most of the rabbis there think think he's John the Baptist, and the Messiah is about to appear. He's the forerunner. He's the guy that's going to start the message in the wilderness, and the Messiah is going to come in on his heels. And so we need the temple service. We need to get back into Israel. The Messiah. Now, why are they saying that? They have identified somebody. I mean, there could be a few rabbis there that think he's the Messiah. The other third key is he has to be of the Davidic dynasty. He has to be of the Davidic bloodline, and there is an effort right now to go back through the European monarchy, cousins of President Donald Trump, to show that his bloodline goes back to the Davidic dynasty. Now, why are these efforts underway? I'm just saying there's something very strange here that's going on, and everything I'm saying can be verified. Multiple news agencies, the Jerusalem Post, Breaking Israel News, they're all talking about this right now. Wow. So they too believe that we are in the end times. They too believe that the Messiah is about to appear. We would say the second coming is about to happen, but their Messiah is going to be a false Messiah. He's going to be the Antichrist, right? So I think that the smart ones in Israel are looking at him right now. They're saying he is God's, what we would call John the Baptist. He is God's messenger. When he takes over in January, there is a 5777 countdown to the appearance of the Messiah, and something could happen overnight that could lead to the reconstruction of the temple.
Now they're back for round two here, and they're promoting Rabbi Mendel Kessin, who has this to say about Donald Trump.
He's going to really be a tremendous president in the United States. Tremendous. Really equality, prosperity, and peace with law and order. He's going to stand up to all the nations of the world. He's going to side with Israel when he realizes that they cannot make peace with Israel, as I've said before, because it's theologically impossible. All the ideas I gave in the previous show and so on. That's the Tahar of America. You now understand what it is, okay? Specifically what it is. See? And that's why I believe, remember I said that the Gematria of Donald Trump is Gematria Mashiach ben David? You know what that means? Do you know what that means? That his name is a Gematria? Of course, that doesn't mean he's Mashiach ben David. Let's forget that, right? That's out. You don't realize something. Somebody who will turn a nation completely diametrically opposite is a Messiah. For them, yes. He, I believe, is the Mashiach of Edom. Isn't that interesting? Because think about it. What does the Mashiach do? Right? He turns a nation, basically that's going awry. I mean, it's collapsing with the evil and the immorality. He turns it around. That's a Messiah. Especially if it's incredibly significant.
Wow. Donald Trump is a Messiah. Donald Trump, he's theologically, it's all a plan. He's been put here, and he turns a nation around. That's what he does.
Welcome back. The Temple Mount is the site of the first and second Jewish temples. But for hundreds of years, it's been occupied by Muslim shrines. The Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Golden Dome of the Rock now sit on the site. But some Jewish people want to build a third Jewish temple. CBN correspondent Julie Stahl spoke with expert Liz Healy about that vision and its challenges.
Liz Healy, welcome to Jerusalem Dateline.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, and we're here on the Mount of Olives with lots of tourists.
Mm-hmm.
And we're overlooking the Temple Mount with the Golden Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. What's the significance of the Temple Mount to Muslims?
For Muslims, it's the third holiest site in their religion. But interestingly enough, it's not the Dome of the Rock, which is the most prominent site. It's the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
What's the significance of the Temple Mount to the Jewish people?
In Jewish tradition, this is where Adam was created. It was also the place after the flood that Noah brought an offering to the Lord. We know that this is the place where Abraham brought Isaac to be sacrificed. Also the place where David bought the threshing floor, where he said he wouldn't make an offering to God that cost him nothing. And it's the site of the first and second temples. It was believed by most also the place for the third temple where it will be built.
It's such a holy site to so many people. Why is it so controversial?
I think that's the exact purpose, because it's so holy, and all the monotheistic religions, Christian, Jews, and Muslims, all feel like this is their place of worship, and so it's very controversial of who's going to actually end up on this mount.
Do you think the three religions could share the Temple Mount?
Personally, I don't, but there is a huge movement about coexisting on the Temple Mount. And even recently, within the last 2 weeks, I know of a meeting between Christians and Muslims and Jews who all are talking about what are the possibilities and how could they establish both a temple and a mosque on the Temple Mount.
What kind of plans are being made to build a third temple?
There are actually quite a few, and depending on the group that you talk to, different architectural designs have been made. So one group is doing a design more like Herod's temple, and it would be on the Temple Mount, and I don't believe that they would have a mosque that would be there. There are other groups that are more focused on the design that's given in Ezekiel, chapters 40 through 48, which is the next structure in Scripture that God said to build a temple in this way. And then even some archaeological research has been done recently that would say that the Holy of Holies is not under the Dome of the Rock, which is the most common assumption, but a little bit to the north, and that's why the coexist movement is moving forward, is because it's possible that they could be right next to each other on the Temple Mount.
Where in the Bible does it talk about building a temple, a third temple?
There's several references, and somewhat depends on interpretation, but we would begin in the book of Daniel, where it talks about the abomination of desolation, and we know that's happened once, but it talks of a future time where the sacrifices will again be taken away. So a temple would have to exist for the sacrifices to be done. We also see it listed in Matthew 24 and Mark 13 and 2 Thessalonians that all make a reference to a false Messiah setting himself up in a temple and declaring himself as God or removing the sacrifices. We also see in the book of Revelation, John is told to measure the temple measurements, and so there has to be a physical temple for him to be able to measure it.
So what preparations are actually being made right now to build the third temple?
There are actually quite a few, and it just shows that God is giving the Jewish people kind of signs or an expectation that it's time for the soon coming Messiah. But there is a group specifically that has reestablished the Levitical priesthood. They just started a school a few months ago, and they have a registry for those who are from the Levitical line that they could come and be trained and be ready to do the service in the temple. They've also started a red heifer farm. The Temple Institute did with an Israeli farmer, and that was again with ritual purity, that they need to have a red heifer that meets Jewish law and has been supervised and doesn't have any white hairs. It's completely red heifer to be able to be burned, mixed with running water, and then used to make everybody ritually pure to be able to go into the temple.
I mean, right now, Jewish people just going on the Temple Mount can create a riot sometimes. So can you envision a scenario where they would allow the temple to be built?
No. A lot of the scholars that I've spoken to talk about how the building of this next temple is really going to bring peace to Israel and to bring safety from all her enemies. And so in that way, I can see that any maybe leader that would be raised up or somebody that would be able to bring the nations together, especially those who might align with Israel, that there might be some agreement that the temple could exist there and this person could be set up in the temple. What we know is that's probably going to be a false Messiah, because as we read in the book of Daniel, that there's a false Messiah that's going to make a peace agreement. And so that's the potential, is that something would be built for the false Messiah to set himself up.